just wanted to share my opinion and feelings on some issue. Just rambling for a minute, with you guys. While I'm doing this, I'm going to look at my cassettes. Okay, but, there's the point of view of men and women, and people talk about sexism a lot. What men and women go through with sexism, but is it always the women who are victims of sexism? Could it be that maybe some of the men are victims of sexism too? Just like if a woman wanted to accuse a man of being a rapist, in a lot of states, especially the South, the woman would have the right to have a man thrown in prison all on hearsay, And those are ways that women have rights and men don't have rights. That people automatically assume that men are sinister and evil, and women are pure as the driven snow and innocent, and that the innocent woman and the woman that's pure as the driven snow. I don't know if you can read any of those tapes. I'm going to be doing some series on my cassettes, and I'm going to do what they call on YouTube cassette rips, They're ripped from cassette, and it's going to be original recordings and voice recordings from people on some of these tapes. It's not going to be copyrighted music, so it's just going to be, maybe there's an interview of a newscast of President Nixon resigning. It's his resignation speech that was actually recorded on this cassette in 1974, just a couple of months before I was born. And so but also women, and I'm going to be doing a series of cassette rips and going through these tapes and doing some of my cassette related stuff too. So even if I was to travel and live in my RV all the time 24/7 as a full-time nomad, I can still have my cassette collection here, or if I moved, I could maybe find a way to have my cassettes in my RV and have a humidity controlled chamber in the RV to keep the humidity below 50% relative humidity to protect the tapes in a temperature controlled environment, or just let them be preserved at someone's house. This is 937 cassettes, almost 1,000 cassettes. I have this on the bottom is the humidity. On the top is the temperature. So if you have cassette tapes or any kind of magnetic tape, this is a dehumidifier. It's to lower the humidity. It has a compressor in it, just like an air conditioner. Lowers the humidity, has a water chamber in the bottom of it that holds water. It sucks water out of the air and puts it into that thing down there. And I've got a hose to run it out if you have to let it go. It can go all the time, and it can lower the humidity from 70% relative humidity all the way down to 50% relative humidity in a matter of less than an hour. So it can do that. It's got a big air compressor. It's a Whirlpool. So got that for $10 on Craigslist. So I don't ever want to get rid of my cassettes, because some of these cassettes are recorded around 1980, 1981 with my mom and me, and I was a child. And they have me talking on these tapes when I was a little child, and I'm going to do some cassette rips, ripping them to YouTube of my mom and my conversations, edited. Of course, editing out the popular music and the country music that she was listening to. But, and another thing about gender, for transgendered people and gay people, maybe life is better now than it was in the 1980s. But for a straight man that wants to bend gender rules or do things that men don't typically always want to do, is it better than the 1980s? I'd say not, because in the 80s there was if you weren't alive in the 1980s, it was a movement called the Sensitive Man movement, and they had polo shirts for men, they were pink. In the 80s they had pink polo shirts for men, button-up shirts like Ocean Pacific, brands like Ocean Pacific, like surfwear. That was popular in the 80s, was your surfwear and surf shirts and Ocean Pacific and Panama Jack and stuff like that of the beach, and kind of like the early 60s with the Beach Boys, that, kind of, theme, So, pink shirts for men, TV shows sitcoms that centered around the man staying home and taking care of the kids, and the woman, in the movie Mr. Mom, things like that were just a movement toward not being homosexual, because it wasn't about being homosexual to straight men who want to redefine manhood into the concept of a modern man, you know? And in a time of innocence where a sensitive man doesn't have to be a gay man, you know? A man can be a sensitive man without being a homosexual. That if a man is a sensitive man, he doesn't have to be a homosexual as a sensitive man. All the men today have just gone back so macho, you know? All the men look like they just got out of jail, you know, and they look like roughnecks, you know? But the popular thing in the 80s was the preppy style in the 80s for popular. Of course, you had your headbangers and your heavy metal people. In the late 80s, I started getting into headbanging and heavy metal. But you know, that's why I admire the new wave. You know, some mixtapes I wanted to show you. And these homemade mixtapes I made. This is good music. And here's the fix. The best beach, Reach the Beach by the Fix. Good music. We got the Police here. You see, I made my series of tapes. These tapes are mixtapes, and I made them. You see, Ride the New Wave, and I made my own homemade covers for these. My crappy camera. I made these on Photoshop and stuff. And just my mixtapes and stuff like that. So I got a collection of them. Here's another one. And I record them on these hi-fi decks, cassette decks. Hi-fi cassette decks. These are tape decks are. This is a 3-head. This is a 3-head cassette deck. Ask someone if you don't know, or Google it. 3-head, dual capstan, logic controls. Sony, got 2 of them just alike. They both work wonderfully. And I got both of these. And I got a couple of JCPenney cassette decks, and they